I will recognize the gentleman from Minnesota.
Well, thank you, members and fellow patriots. It's hard to participate in projects like this without becoming somewhat a student of history. And a couple of dates come to mind, and I'd like to share them with you. When we think of the date December 7th, most of us think about the attack on our great nation on Pearl Harbor. But also on December 7th, in 1787, Delaware was the first state to sign on to ratify the Constitution. Also, in December 7th of 2013, legislators from all around the nation came together and gathered on what would be known as the Mount Vernon Assembly to discuss a provision put into our U.S. Constitution that gave power to our sovereign states. That assembly later had to become known as the Assembly of State Legislatures because in our modern technology somebody had taken the name, the Mount Vernon Assembly, and saved it as a domain. On December 15th, 1787, 230 years ago today, our forefathers concluded all of their work on drafting the Constitution. So I find it ironic that one of the provisions under the Constitution, here we are, September 15th, and we are concluding our work on whether or not to use this very important tool, Article 5 under the U.S. Constitution. I also think about how we think about our political figures and how we've memorialized them over time, whether it was Lincoln or Washington or Jefferson, Roosevelt, all of whom are on the face of a piece of stone in my colleague's state behind me, South Dakota. We should also be thinking about another gentleman named George Mason, who was the father of the provision that he insisted be in the Article 5 of our U.S. Constitution. So I think it's just incredible foresight that this individual had to imagine that one day this federal government that the sovereign states were creating, that they were giving power to, that they recognized under the Articles of Confederation and the weaknesses that were in that document. George Mason stood up before the assembly towards the end of the convention, and I'm paraphrasing, but he said, you know, come on guys, I mean, we couldn't fix the Articles of Confederation, so here we are about to cede all power to amend this Constitution to this federal government. We need to protect the liberty and the sovereignty of the states. And that amendment was debated as we've debated amendments here, and it was unanimously consented to that the states should have this power. So with that, I'll conclude, but I think one day maybe George Mason will be more of an iconic figure in our founding history than he's been given credit for today. Thank you.